A country in mourning. A suicide bomber kills dozens of Christians during Mass in Egypt. The message Pope Francis is sending to the Coptic community. CIA bombshell. Did Russia hack last month's U.S. presidential election? What a new report reveals. The feast day for Our Lady of Guadalupe. We take you to celebrations here in the U.S. and abroad. And a milestone for EWTN, Mother Angelica, a nun with a vision, forms what would become the largest religious media network in the world. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, December 12th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Senate Republicans say Congress will investigate CIA allegations that Russia interfered with the U.S. election to help Donald Trump. The president-elect says he doesn't believe the intelligence report and calls it ridiculous. Jason Calvi joins us from Capitol Hill. Jason.
Lauren, Trump spokesman Jason Miller says focusing on Russian interference is really an attempt to delegitimize his win. On Fox News Sunday, Trump blamed Democrats, but tonight lawmakers in both parties want answers.
Senator Mitch McConnell says the Senate Intelligence Panel will investigate whether Russian hacking during the election sought to help Trump's candidacy.
Obviously, any foreign breach of our cybersecurity measures is disturbing, and I strongly condemn any such efforts.
And the Senate's top Republican is getting bipartisan support.
The fact that the CIA and FBI disagree shows the need for a bipartisan investigation that gets to the bottom of this. The investigation should be tough, strong, and bipartisan, and should have access to all materials, classified and not.
The CIA recently concluded with, quote, high confidence that Russia sought to influence the U.S. election on Trump's behalf. But a GOP strategist and Trump advisor says there's no evidence.
What proof does anyone have that they affected the outcome? Because I've heard zero. Okay? So show me what facts have actually shown that anything undermined that election.
Trump dismissed earlier intel reports that Russia interfered, and now he says it's a case of sour grapes. He tweets, "Can you imagine if the election results were the opposite and we tried to play the Russia CIA card? It would be called conspiracy theory." Mitch McConnell, though, says the U.S. cannot trust Russia.
The Russians are not our friends, and I think we ought to approach all of these issues on the assumption that the Russians do not wish us well.
In the House, Speaker Ryan says their Intelligence Committee will continue to investigate cyber threats. President-elect Trump says he doesn't oppose an Obama-ordered investigation into the hacking, saying it should not only look at Russia, but also other countries and people.
Jason, Hillary Clinton was in town. What is she making of these new allegations that Russia helped Trump by hacking the Clinton campaign chair's emails and those of the DNC?
Well, the Clinton campaign chair, John Podesta, says President Obama owes it to the American people to reveal to them all that he knows about the hacking. He's also calling for an intelligence briefing to be given before the Electoral College votes next week, a week from today, Lauren.
Jason Calvi reporting on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. The candidate expected to be Trump's pick for Secretary of State could face resistance from lawmakers. Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, is known as a deal maker with no experience in international diplomacy. Among the contenders for the hottest seat on Trump's cabinet, Secretary of State, a new name rises to the top. Trump tweets, "Whether or not I choose him for state, Rex Tillerson, the chairman and CEO of ExxonMobil, is a world-class player and deal maker." The controversy around Tillerson, Democrats cite the potential nominee's business ties to Russia.
I am concerned about his relationship with Russia. We want to make sure that the Secretary of State is a person who represents America. And once again, Russia is not our friend.
Tillerson, a lifetime Exxon employee, comes recommended from those who have had the job.
Other secretaries of state like Condoleezza Rice and Secretary Jim Baker, Secretary Rice and Baker, have recommended him as a person that would be great at this job.
This Trump advisor also says former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who withdrew himself from the running, has a good chance of getting a spot on Trump's team.
I know that the president-elect is very fond of the mayor, as all of us are here. They attended the Army-Navy game together over the weekend. I still think that there's a role for the mayor inside the administration as long as he wants one.
Trump's choice to head the Department of Homeland Security is General John Kelly. Kelly is a former commander of U.S. Southern Command. He has a unique insight into some of the challenges the U.S. faces at its southern border. That's according to Trump's transition team. He's expected to support Trump's views on border control and illegal immigration. The Boston native says he is humbled and grateful to be nominated. More action today at Trump Tower. Carly Fiorina, former political opponent of the president-elect, met with Trump. She said the two spoke about China being our nation's most important adversary and about the threat of hacking. The New York Times reports she could be the nation's next director of national intelligence. And that will be a key position since Donald Trump says he's not interested in getting daily intelligence briefings, relying instead on the vice president and his aides to keep him informed. Trump said he doesn't have to be told the same thing in the same words, quote, every single day, and that if things change, he's available on 1 minute's notice. Critics think Trump is making a mistake.
To not have that direct face-to-face briefing every day, I just think is a mistake and will cost him when he makes a decision based on what somebody on his staff filtered the information.
And a federal judge requests or rejects a request for presidential recount of paper ballots in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump won the state by about 44,000 votes. Another judge halted a recount in Michigan last week, and in Wisconsin, a recount finished today. Hillary Clinton picked up 25 votes. She still finished more than 22,000 votes behind Donald Trump. Republicans gained one more seat in the U.S. Senate this weekend. Louisiana voters elected John Kennedy to fill the state's open Senate seat. Kennedy's win gives Senate Republicans a 52-48 edge. In his victory speech, the senator-elect says he's not moving to Washington, and he'll help as many people as he can.
In the world we live in today, there are no state issues, and there are no local issues, and there are no federal issues. They're just issues. And if any single Louisianian has a problem, whether it's at the state level or the local level or the federal level, it's my problem.
Kennedy defeated Democrat Foster Campbell. Saturday's election settled the nation's last Senate seat for next session of Congress, which begins in January. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A lawsuit seeks to block a new rule in Texas which requires aborted babies to be buried or cremated starting a week from today. Abortion facilities will no longer be able to treat the babies like medical waste. However, earlier legal challenges did block similar measures in Louisiana and Indiana. The Supreme Court rejects challenges to the NFL's $1 billion plan to settle thousands of concussion lawsuits filed by former players. Payouts can now start to those who have been diagnosed with brain injuries linked to repeated concussions. The settlement covers more than 20,000 retired NFL players. The nation's highest court has denied appeals from two death row inmates who questioned their lawyers' actions. Sammy Stokes of South Carolina, pictured here, is one of the men on death row. His lawyer previously prosecuted him and didn't tell the judge of his earlier role. James Tyler from Louisiana was also denied an appeal. Workers respond to the scene of a church collapse in Nigeria, which killed at least 160 people. Hundreds of people were inside the Rainers Bible Church when the iron roof caved in. The church was still under construction, and workers had been rushing to finish it just in time for Saturday's ceremony in honor of its founder. The president of Egypt says a suicide bomber caused a blast inside a Cairo church on Sunday that killed 24 people. Wyatt Goolsbee has reaction to one of the deadliest attacks against Coptic Orthodox Christians. Wyatt.
Yeah, Lauren, no group has claimed responsibility for yesterday's attack, but the Egyptian president says they have identified the 22-year-old suicide bomber and arrested 4 people. During funeral services today, he said the bombing hurt the country, but it will not break them. A day of mourning in Egypt's capital as the country's Coptic community holds a funeral for 24 Christians killed at Sunday Mass. The Coptic Orthodox leader is asking God to protect his people, yet he knows the destiny of his church is to offer martyrs. Sunday's attack was one of the deadliest targeting the country's religious minority. The bomb went off around 10 a.m. at a chapel adjacent to St. Mark's Cathedral, seat of the Coptic Christian Church. This woman says she left Mass just 2 minutes before the bomb went off. The explosion killed 25 people, including the bomber. Another 49 people were injured, mostly women and children.
This was a traumatic experience, even for someone watching it.
Father John Farag, a Cairo native who is now based at St. George Coptic Orthodox Church in Maryland, says he's horrified to see what's happening to Christians in Egypt, but he's not surprised.
It has been a tendency in the Egyptian society to persecute anyone that disagrees with this particular understanding of Islam that sponsored the fanaticism and the terrorism that we witness now.
Father John urges all Christians to pray for peace and for a change of heart.
Our Lord taught us to love our enemies, and how we can love our enemies by praying for them so that these enemies would convert and return to God.
Egypt's Christians account for about 10% of the country's 92 million people. For decades, Christians have complained of discrimination, saying they are denied top jobs. They've also accused security forces of failing to do enough to protect them from extremists. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsby reporting. Pope Francis offers his condolences in a phone call to the Coptic patriarch of Egypt after the Cairo bombing. Mary Shovlin reports from Rome.
The Vatican says Francis told Patriarch Tawadros II Monday that the Catholic Church was united in the blood of our martyrs. Francis has frequently denounced the indiscriminate nature of Islamic attacks against Christians. On Sunday, the Holy Father said there is only one way to respond: faith in God and unity in our common values. That was echoed in his message for the World Day of Peace released today. In it, Francis calls the gospel command to love your enemies the Magna Carta of Christian nonviolence. A Vatican official says Pope Francis succeeds where diplomacy fails.
When the Holy Father can intervene in certain things personally with people involved, it's something that we need to guard, because it's almost a trump card that we have.
But every member of society can help promote peace, according to Francis.
The Holy Father insists that nonviolence begins in the heart of every person. We have to start from there, and then he links up the concept of nonviolence with family life.
The World Day of Peace is celebrated each year on January 1st. In Rome, Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly.
The Holy Father also sends a letter to the president of Syria. That's a country locked in a civil war. Francis asks President Bashar al-Assad to end the violence and ensure that international humanitarian law is fully respected with regard to the protection of the civilians and access to humanitarian aid. Coming up, advice for President-elect Donald Trump as he plans to fight ISIS. The former UN ambassador to Iraq weighs in. And the face of Nicholas. Scientists say they've made the most realistic portrait ever of St. Nick. With a Republican-led Congress and Donald Trump in the White House, conservatives hope to seize on a unique opportunity to advance religious liberty protections. Joining us is Melanie Israel, a research associate with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Last week, Congress passed a defense spending bill. That was a must-pass. We had to do that. But the Russell Amendment was not attached to it. Tell us why this is significant. That would have protected federal contractors from being forced to violate their religious beliefs.
Exactly. So in the House-passed version of the NDAA, there was an amendment of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, must-pass bill. Congressman Russell from Oklahoma had added an amendment that did exactly as you said. It clarifies existing employment law, saying that religious organizations have exemptions to ensure that they can maintain their religious identity. And it said that those exemptions apply when it comes to federal grants and contracts. So the House voted with that in the NDAA. When it went to conference with the Senate version, it was taken out because President Obama threatened to veto the bill.
So to veto this must-pass bill, they had to pull the Russell Amendment. Now, will Congress revisit this issue next session?
It looks like they will. The amendment had broad support. Like I said, it passed in the House, and Congressman Russell and other members are they feel very strongly about this bill, and they should. And so now that we're going to have a Republican president, we've got a Republican-controlled Senate, exactly, there will be more opportunities in the new Congress for them to address it.
States have had much bigger success in fighting back against efforts to limit religious freedom. How do you think their hands are going to be strengthened now that we are all Republican-controlled?
I think we're going to continue to see those efforts at the state level, precisely because what you pointed to, they have been successful at the state level. And hopefully now that we've got some new folks in charge here in DC, that we'll be successful at the federal level too.
Do you think that Representative Tom Price, who's going to be leading the Department of Health and Human Services, is going to be significantly helpful in this effort?
According to his record, it looks like he's going to be very helpful when it comes to religious liberty, religious protections. He has been a fighter in Congress when it comes to defending life and defending conscience, so he'll be able to do that at HHS as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Melanie Israel, Research Associate with Heritage Foundation. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
In a surprise visit to Iraq, Defense Secretary Ash Carter says Iraqi and U.S.-led troops have killed more or wounded more than 2,000 ISIS militants since October. The fight against the terror group extends to Syria. Carter pledges to send 200 more U.S. troops.
These uniquely skilled operators will join the 300 U.S. Special Operations Forces already in Syria to continue organizing, training, equipping, and otherwise enabling capable, motivated local forces to take the fight to ISIL.
Defeating ISIS is a top priority for President-elect Trump. Wyatt Goolsbee spoke to a former Iraqi ambassador to the United Nations last month about what the new president needs to do to fight the terror group.
What would be your advice to the next president in terms of defeating ISIS or ISIL?
Well, Syria is a much more complicated situation than Iraq. In Iraq, all the Iraqis are firing in the same direction, and it's at ISIL. In Syria, that's not necessarily true. The groups tend to, from time to time, also aim their rifles at one another as well as at ISIL. And the government of Syria has been fighting everyone except ISIL. So this is a cancer. This is a cancer in the Middle East that has attempted to metastasize. It really must be taken up root and branch and destroyed. I think American military planners know that. Syria is a very complicated issue, much more complicated than Iraq, but the military planners are certainly well aware that you cannot concede large portions of territory to ISIL. That will simply embolden them and feeds into their narrative and embolden them to attack outside the Middle East, as indeed they have in Europe, and no doubt would attack the United States if they could.
Well, it's so often we hear and cover things from an American point of view. It certainly is interesting to hear things from the Iraqi point of view. Mr. Ambassador, thanks so much for being with us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Lauren, we'll send it back to you.
Scientists in Liverpool have re-released an image of Nicholas they say is the most realistic portrait ever of the saint. Legend has it that he punched or slapped heretics at the Council of Nicaea. Well, it seems he may have been punched back. Researchers from the Face Lab at John Moores University used a facial reconstruction system and 3D technology 2 years ago to create this portrait with a broken nose. His feast day was last week, so the lab has just reposted that on social media again. Dancing Santas in the streets of Bethlehem? Yesterday, that happened along with colorful floats with biblical themes. There are about 150,000 Christians currently living in Israel, but Christians make up less than 2% of the population there and in the Palestinian territories. The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem is built atop the site where Christians believe Jesus was born. Up next, on her feast day, we learn why people across the U.S. love Our Lady of Guadalupe. And a nun's vision. We're celebrating the day Mother Angelica established the Eternal Word television network. Thousands of Mexicans and pilgrims from around the world gather in the basilica dedicated to Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. Some arrive barefoot, others on their knees. On this feast day, Catholics show their love, faith, and devotion to the Virgin Mary. There are few countries where the devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe is greater than in Mexico, where her image is seen on public buses and the homes of the rich and poor alike. From one generation to the next, the story of Guadalupe is shared with reverence and with love. Joining us from Miami is Dr. Gracie Christie, Senior Policy Advisor for the Catholic Association, who grew up in Mexico. You know, on a Mexican hillside, Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared to Juan Diego, a very poor man. He lived a life of struggle. What does it mean that she didn't appear to a rich person?
Well, it means that she was there to announce the coming of Christianity to all the people of the Americas, to the native peoples, that were going to welcome her with full hearts as a wonderful vision of what life should be, a noble and beautiful, dignified life as children of God.
The feast day is celebrated by Catholics throughout the world, but what is it that explains the Mexican people's reverence for her?
The people of Mexico have an intimate and tender connection with Our Lady through the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe, who seems to them and is felt by them as a real mother. They rest in her gaze and in her care, like we all rested on our mothers when we were very young. And that persists, and it brings hearts to Jesus.
When Pope Francis traveled to Mexico, I remember in February, he prayed before Our Lady of Guadalupe. You know, he's the first Latin American pope. He has a great devotion to her. Is her appeal universal throughout Latin America?
Her appeal is universal, and my personal hope is that as the Church in the United States becomes more Hispanic, simply by demographics, that Americans here can grasp that kind of tender connection that Latin Americans have with Our Lady, because it does inform our faith in a very intimate, beautiful way.
What lesson do you think we can take from the feast day that can be applied to our everyday lives?
Well, that we have a mother in heaven who loves each and every single one of us individually with a really close and intimate and personal love. And we can rely on her completely to be there for us and to guide us where we need to get to.
I know here at EWTN News Nightly, we have a beautiful picture of her in our chapel, which is right next to our control room, and I love having that. And you know, I'm not living in Mexico, so I guess you're right. It's all over. Dr. Gracie Christie, an advisory board member of the Catholic Association, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me again.
Well, as you heard her say, the love for Our Lady of Guadalupe spreads way beyond Mexico. Mark Irons reports on some of the celebrations in her honor taking place across the United States.
Known as the patroness of the Americas, Our Lady of Guadalupe is an inspiration for many in the U.S.
A lot of people believe in her, that she can do great things.
Devoted crowds, large and small, gathered around the country. More than 40,000 in Los Angeles, close to 1,000 in Detroit, and even a few hundred in Wilson, North Carolina.
And in Washington, D.C., hundreds are processing down the streets to the shrine of Our Lady's Immaculate Conception.
Frank Cervantes carries flowers for Our Lady of Guadalupe. He says she heard his family's prayers when he survived life-threatening kidney failure as a child.
She gave me another chance in life.
Many here are parishioners of Sacred Heart Parish in D.C., led by Father Moises Vialta. He says La Morenita, or the Dark Virgin as she is known, is one of the heroes of the Catholic faith.
Because of her values, because of her message. And so you want to put it up there so for other people to see.
We honor Our Lady, we venerate Our Lady because she's the Mother of God. She doesn't take the place of God, she always leads us to God.
And so on her feast day, the faithful pay homage. Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
The Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe also represents a milestone for us, EWTN. Mother Angelica founded the network on this date in 1980. She celebrated the on-air launch less than a year later on another Marian feast day, the Assumption, August 15th, 1981. We are now the largest religious media network in the world. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, happy Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I'm Lauren Ashburn, and I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night, and God bless you.